The MGTOW world exists almost exclusively on the internet. For many of us 30-somethings, the emergence of such a global philosophical movement still comes close to a miracle. Every man, but especially those who experienced the 1990s and early 2000s, can probably still remember this sense of revelation when he found out that there actually existed an alternative to this feminist narrative which had been spoon-fed to him for years by the media, by the education system, and also by the entertainment industry. All of a sudden, a man could find out that he was not to blame for everything that went wrong in his relationship, that he should not put up with every emotional fling of the women surrounding him. In fact, he learned that he should altogether stop making female validation the first priority in his life. The Art of Manliness, theartofmanliness.com, marks the first step on this road to these revelations that so many of us have experienced in recent years. It is a website that hardly needs an introduction. Since its initial launch in 2008, it has become the most successful men's issues-related website on the internet, and might just as well be credited for single-handedly creating what is now called the manosphere. The Art of Manliness wanted to teach men to be men again, to walk away from this immature, hedonistic, hipster lifestyle that characterized men and boys over the last 20-30 years, and to rediscover virtues like duty, discipline, cleanliness, fashion, and so on. All this may not sound exactly new from today's perspective, but back then there simply was no market for ideas like this. AOM literally became a voice for men before this was even a thing. The Art of Manliness was original, it was mature, and it provided free information for the most crucial situations in a man's life, from a job interview to winning carnival games to impress your sweetheart. There simply was a friendly and relaxed atmosphere to this site, an atmosphere which was actually only underlined by these characteristic black and white photographies from the 1950s and earlier, which you can find on almost every article. In short, AOM wanted to make men, and men responded. There was no men's rights movement to speak of back then, so the website filled a void felt by many men all over the world, and the website has become a deserving success story with thousands of visitors each day. Still, because there was nothing comparable around on the internet, AOM and its producer and chief writer Brad McKay was not only to reflect but also to actively shape what a masculine identity should be like. And although it was the first influential masculist website, if you compare AOM's content and general philosophical outlook to other prominent MGTOW producers, you will find almost no similarities. It seems as if AOM simply provided the immeasurable relief to men all over the globe by telling them that they had nothing to be ashamed of. And once this information was received and processed, the masculist movement took an entirely different and also a more radical turn. In recent years, AOM has repeatedly received criticism which deals exactly with this perceived lack of ideological dedication to the MGTOW movement and what it stands for. Many articles are written cooperatively by Brad McKay and his wife Kate, which of course already raises the question if a man's issues publication that is in touch with the mindset of its readership can be hosted by a female. Yet, even if you ignore this point, there is a far more relevant issue that is basically impossible to ignore if you evaluate the Art of Manliness and its content. A focal point in the MGTOW discourse is that as a male in the 21st century, you're basically fucked, especially if you live in Europe and North America. The school system works against you, the media works against you, and most importantly, the legal system works against you. And the evidence is there for everyone to see. In addition, second and third wave feminism has made not only marriage, not only one-night stands, but even a simple co-worker relationship a potential danger to your emotional and also your financial resources. And it is a danger that fewer and fewer men are willing to accept. All these reflections, which by the way have a very valid point, are noticeably absent from AOM. While the website offers you a wide variety of men's-related issues, content that deals with love, romance, or women in general is very sparse and very often also a bit prudish. From what can be seen, the website still believes that romantic relationships and marriages can work out, and that a man has perhaps not the duty but the responsibility to make things work. Apart from a short piece on identifying drama queens, there is nothing about female manipulation tactics, nothing on shit tests, or the emotional vampirism of making your women happy. And this may perhaps be the most important reason for AOM's inevitable decline and also its growing distance between its own philosophy and what is relevant to most men in 2017. The website has a romantic preoccupation for the past, so when they try to address relationship issues, they reach, of course, for source material which was written between 1850 and 1950. And which naturally does not include the devastations caused by third-wave feminism. This makes a lot of AOM's commentary on women and romance come across not only as outlandish and stuffy, but sometimes as downright ridiculous when compared to the present-day situation. Many men say that they are disaffected because women aren't women anymore, but AOM still argues as if this was still the case, and as if Tumblr feminism never happened. But even apart from AOM's rather awkward relationship to present-day problems between the sexes, the rest of the content as well has undergone an observable change. AOM was always about leading disoriented men back to manhood and rediscovering virtues that were characteristic for men of a better era. Still, the scope to what is perceived as relevant for being a man, according to the website, has widened beyond any reasonable proportion. And what once started out as a collection of grandfatherly advice about life has both in tone and in content over the years turned into an increasingly dogmatic and humorless Miss Manners column that seems more eager to lecture the reader about his potential shortcomings than to enrich him personally. Brett McKay apparently wants a world filled with ethical, hard-working, neatly dressed go-getters, but it is doubtful if this type of man that he describes here and that he envisions have actually ever existed, whether in the 1950s or before that. With every article you read on the art of manliness, you get the increased feeling that there is virtually nothing that a man can feel carefree about. Everything he does, everything that he buys, everything that he reads, everything that he eats is in some way a reflection of his personal manhood and manliness. And while even this may not be problematic in itself, the increasingly narrow focus and the criteria that the art of manliness presents as indispensable for being a man are often beyond ridiculous. So, to illustrate my point, let me just briefly make an example here and summarize the ideal man for you, according to the art of manliness, for which I will use their primary source material. So, the ideal man, according to the art of manliness, gets up at 4:30 in the morning and starts his day with a short routine of calisthenics, followed by an intense James Bond shower. After that, he engages in prayer or some other form of spiritual introspection, and then sits down to write 4 or 5 letters to various people by hand, of course, with a brand new fountain pen, until finally, after 2 hours, the sun comes up. After enjoying a nice cup of coffee, the beans of which he has roasted and grinded himself, he drives to work, where he is, of course, not only slightly better dressed than the rest of the team, but also the go-to guy of the company and able, without any conceivable effort to outperform all of his mates. After punching the clock at 5 p.m., that is, if he's not working voluntary overtime to impress the boss, he dedicates another 2 hours to building up his own business that he intends to start sometime in the future. After this, he drives to the gym for a vigorous workout because, according to the Art of Manliness, the ideal man works out 7 days a week. 7 days a week. After finishing his workout and returning home, he finally has some time for himself. So he first shines his shoes, a task that always gives him great pleasure, and then he goes down to the basement for some woodwork, some whitting or leather burning, followed perhaps by 2 or 3 pages of the latest Teddy Roosevelt biography, before his eyelids get heavy and he finally goes to sleep. Rinse and repeat. So please tell me, does this sort of life sound like a dangerous, hungry alpha male to you? Or more like a repressed social outcast who is desperately clinging to crushing routines to compensate for the fact that he has absolutely no life? And this is exactly the point. Instead of encouraging men to find their own purpose, i.e. make them go their own way, the Art of Manliness forces male identity into a firm, dogmatic structure by preaching ironclad ideals that are not only almost unattainable by the average man, but in most cases are also completely obsolete in 2017. And worse than that, the underlying message of most of AOM's content is to micromanage even the most trivial aspects of your existence. It all started nice and harmless with how to match a shirt and a tie or to make a great first impression. But in 2017, we actually arrive at an ongoing series on successful social interaction that so far comprises 9 chapters. And this is the part that not only sets AOM apart from other MGTOW producers, but also which makes especially some of its more recent content actually more harmful than useful, especially to developing men. The second wave of MGTOW producers make the point that the ultimate aim for a man is to become fully independent. Independent from financial demands, independent from female demands, independent from society's demands. If he gives, it is because he chooses to give. Apart from that, his personal success and his personal fulfillment and self-actualization are the only relevant criteria in his life. And this is the complete opposite of the Art of Manliness, because the Art of Manliness actually encourages men to conform to society's demands. It makes men obsessed about problems they never knew they had. How they enter a room, how they leave a room, their handshake, their posture, and even their motherfucking voice. And making men obsess over matters like these by providing an elaborate, expert-approved script for almost every social interaction produces the exact opposite of what AOM claims to aim for. You do not get a well-rounded, charismatic man who is able to impress the people on his table with his knowledge and wit. Instead, you get a neurotic in a suit who is constantly afraid to offend and has to rehearse even the most basic form of human contact the night before it's actually happening. And if you had a look into the AOM discussion forum before they outsourced it to Facebook, you were initially struck by a pervading sense of almost crippling insecurity by most AOM readers. Every other question, literally every other question, started with, is it manly to? Is it manly to cook? Is it manly to read? Is it manly to like opera? Is it manly to have a cat? Is it manly to prefer soft toilet paper? These men, if you could call them that, seem desperate for external validation. Instead of giving a fuck about what the world would think of them, they were actually willing to drop a hobby or passion of theirs or to make a complete lifestyle change just because some random people on the internet told them so. And with this, I return to my initial point. AOM does not encourage male independence. It preaches a firm catalog of criteria that you have to fulfill to be a man. And these are standards which are a little more of a reflection of the world that Brett McKay wants to live in personally. And this catalog also has gotten more and more rigid and elaborate as time went by. And the content has also gotten more and more predictable. I mean, if you find an article with the title, "Should you work out when you're sick?" you know the answer without even having to read the article. And if you're familiar with the underlying patterns of AOM's recent content, you also know that this article is not actually based on sound medical arguments, but rather on Brett McKay's dogmatic view of what manly men do, and that he has just contacted some esoteric expert to give credibility to what is actually just a disguised form of his personal belief that men who don't work out every day are sissies. Notwithstanding the fact that it contradicts all medical and human reason, notwithstanding the fact that an illness is actually your body's way of telling you that something you did had negative effects on your organism and that you should perhaps lay low for a couple of days to let your system recover, notwithstanding even the fact that men who make a point of working out when they're sick are mostly insufferable douchebags, both outside and inside the gym, AOM says you have to work out every day even when you're sick, and this is final. And this brings me back to my initial point. As time went by and the more other MGTOW commentators I discovered, I felt more and more turned off by the sheer rigidity with which AOM continues to present its points, and also by the increasing outlandishness of their worldview. Books you should read, movies you should watch, things you should do in the summer, things you should have in your pockets, poems you should know by heart. This is not about setting men free. It is about men following standards of manhood as seen fit by Mr. McKay. It is not MGTOW, it is MGBW, men going Brett's way. And to top it off, the McKays don't even seem to be aware of the irony of producing literally dozens of articles like this and then turning up a piece about developing a more relaxed approach to life, titled "Don't Shoot All Over Yourself." Undeniably, without the shred of a doubt, The Art of Manliness and its producers and all of its authors, they deserve our gratitude and continue to do so. Not only for single-handedly laying the foundation of the modern MGTOW movement, but also for their countless hours of research and undeniably useful advice about certain topics. But at least in my personal opinion, the website has more than overstayed its welcome, and I find the majority of its recent content to be not actually useful, and in some cases actually detrimental to the quest of finding an identity for yourself as a man in the 21st century. The site can still serve the very valid purpose of a gateway drug to the red pill, but when it comes to an actual representation of the life of a man in present-day society, The Art of Manliness feels increasingly out of touch, and the second-wave masculists like Sandman or Terence Popp have picked up the torch. While I also disagree with the overly paranoid rhetoric that characterizes some MGTOW publications and that states that all women, literally all women on this planet are out to get you, there are still visible manifestations of misandry, of anti-male hatred in today's society, and these are simply not addressed. Not even acknowledged on The Art of Manliness. If you follow this website, then there are no gender studies, there are no family courts that can destroy your life and your future within minutes. There are no false rape allegations. There are no Tumblr posts that literally call for the extermination of the entire male population on this planet. The Art of Manliness shows us a world that I think every single one of us would like to live in, would like to return to, but it has next to nothing to offer with regards to the situation of most men in Western Europe and the United States in the 21st century. And in that respect, I would actually call its influence dangerous, especially for younger men, because by not acknowledging these issues, by not acknowledging the existence of these issues, you send a dangerous message to your readers, especially your younger readers, because you're communicating to them that the system is still fair and that they have nothing to fear in present-day society, when this is very clearly not the case anymore. And this is perhaps the fundamental flaw in the concept of the art of manliness. It assumes that society is practically the same as it was 50 years ago, and it were just the men who got lazy, and that all we have to do is bring back the hat and shave with a safety razor, and man will be man again. Still, as everyone knows, the problem runs deeper. Far more deep, in fact. MGTOW is about awarding spiritual liberation for man. Becoming aware of what is happening around you and make the decision to no longer play along with that. The consequences you take are your individual choice, but the first revelation after swallowing the red pill is that Western civilization has turned into a very cold and hostile environment for man over the last 20 or 30 years. And that there are actually people out there who are actively motivated by their hatred for man. All men. These people are doing their best to keep up the status quo, fully aware of what they're doing and deeply convinced that harassing, bullying or marginalizing man is a way of delivering historic justice. If society has to change, the institutions have to change. This is what MGTOW is about, and this is a concern that the art of manliness is not willing or not able to address.